Hi, I'm Anthony from bestbluesguitarlessonsonline.com, and in this video we will talk about gut-wrenching sounds and blues playing. And I get a lot of questions from people here on the YouTube channel and on Facebook about how they can instill more gut-wrenching feelings like you hear in the best players they're playing, and I'm talking about Matt Schofield, Robin Ford, and they play sometimes outside of the normal scales that we are used to hearing. And we will talk about this here. I will play, for example, what I'm talking about, and I will get to the licks and to everything you can use to play with the most emotional impact and outside tones. And there's one instance here in this solo when I used, for instance, this lick. And especially the first part of the lick is really cool to use. It's a diminished lick. So it's a lick using a diminished 7 arpeggio. And the notes from this arpeggio are pretty much straightforward. When we play them on the high E string, we have the A note, the C note, the E flat note, and the G flat note. So we can play them over here in a little 3-note string pattern. And I started using the B string 7th fret, which is the G flat note, with a little slide into that note. And then I'm playing the A note and the C note. So this is a little 3-note fragment that I derived from this diminished 7 arpeggio. And if you want to use a hammer-on, pull-on the high E string, that's fine too. It's a really cool, quirky way to add some embellishments to this lick. And then the rest of this lick is fairly straightforward because we're shifting this whole 3-note fragment just 3 frets up. And I won't get into the diminished 7 arpeggio here, but basically what we're doing when we're playing the same 3 notes 3 frets higher is we're basically playing the same notes from that diminished 7 arpeggio. So we first looked at the notes on the high E string, which were A, C, E flat, G flat, and when we play them 3 frets higher now, we have also the A note, but now here on the B string, then we have the C note on the high E string again, and you have the E flat note. So it's 3 notes from the diminished 7 arpeggio. But the motions and the fingering stay the same than previous, and that's the real cool thing. Once you have this first 3-note fragment down, and you can of course improvise with the order of the notes as you like. You can play a little sequence for yourself and then shift the 3 notes higher, and then we can do this indefinitely. So we can shift the whole thing 3 frets higher until we run out of frets basically. But you can see and you can hear that it builds tension, and if you hear it over the chords here, we need to resolve that tension. So that's really important. We can't stay with building up tension forever. because we're using here outside tones, especially if we play it over the A7 chord, because what I recorded here in the backing track is a blues in A. So basically this diminished 7 arpeggio can be used at different times in our progression. I won't go really deep into this topic because it's a really big topic, but it comes down that over every chord we can play notes that are really consonant with the chord. We can also play notes that are dissonant tensions. In jazz we use that term tension a lot, or extension note, and we can then also use outside tones. So on every chord there are multiple notes we can really use to make an impact. So for instance, over this A7 chord we have 7 notes that we can use in the scale, and some of those are also in the chord. The chord tones which are in the chord will sound really stable, and if we land on one of the chord tones, that will resolve things. And if we want to build a bit more tension instead of resolving tension, we can use, for instance, one of the notes that is in the scale but not in the chord, because if you know your theory, you know that in the A7 chord there are 4 notes, but in the scale that this chord is derived from, which would be the Mixolydian mode, we have 7 notes. So without going really deep into the music theory of things here, we have 3 more notes that aren't in the chord that build more tension. But also, as you know your music theory, you know that there are 12 notes in the musical alphabet, and anywhere on the guitar we can only play those 12 notes at any given time. So we had 7 notes that are in the scale and also in the chord. Now we have 5 more. We could call them outside tones. They aren't in the scale, they are outside. So one of the ways to use those outside tones is not going like playing chromatic type of exercise or scale, because it's really hard to make that sound good, but to go with a bit more of a structure like this diminished 7 arpeggio. And that's why here we are starting out on the YouTube channel to build up a bit more tension in your blues playing by using this 3-note fragment that we can shift higher and higher. And some of the notes will be outside tones, especially like the notes that you hear that are really harsh to the ear. As you can hear, this is really an outside tone. It doesn't really fit with the chord that's underlying. And we can use this whole 12-bar progression to basically implement this diminished arpeggio over. And there's a term in the music theory that talks about imposing things on top of each other. And basically what we're doing here is superimposing an arpeggio over different chords. And superimposition, it is really a difficult word when you first hear it, but it isn't really that hard. Superimposing just means that we're taking something and we're putting it on top of something else. So here we're taking diminished 7 arpeggio and we're putting it over, for instance, the A7 chord. Some of the notes will be chord tones, some of the notes will be inside of the scale, but not in the chord, so we call those tensions or extension notes, and other notes will be outside. So that's pretty fine, and those outside tones will sound really harsh. So we need a way to resolve them, and I resolved it here up on the 12th fret to an A minor 7 arpeggio. And that's really something that I love to play, something for one of the upcoming lessons on this channel, so keep an eye out for this. but it's really cool to resolve it in that way. As you can see, that's really cool. Cool way to resolve this tension that we build up with those outside tones from this diminished 7 arpeggio. So I hope you like this lick. I hope you like this introduction to playing a bit more outside. And if you do so, subscribe to the channel, I would say, and also make sure that way you make sure that you get the latest videos on your home feed on YouTube. Also visit the website at bestbluesguitarlessonsonline.com, because there are lots of free resources on these topics that you can download, like how to play more advanced blues guitar solos. So keep an eye on that, and see you in the next video then.